It's Thursday, September 14th. I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Football Show presented by NerdWallet. It's a hell of a day to talk ball. And joining me to do just that is Dalton Del Don for another Stat Nerd Thursday. Dalton, what's going on, buddy?
What's up, Harmon? Up and down first week in a different universe. J.K. Dobbins has 3 touchdowns, a bunch of targets right now, looking good. But in this one, he suffered an Achilles injury right away and joined Deontay Johnson as 2 of my favorite targets to immediately get injured. So it took about 3 quarters for me to be humbled. But I did have some good stuff, though, to be sure. It was a fun week. How you doing, man?
It was a fun week. I think the defenses struck back. The defenses fought back in week 1. That's been my big takeaway actually doing the research here for this Stat Nerd Thursday show. Mixed results just like you in fantasy. But yeah, my big takeaway right now is that defenses are punching back in the NFL, which is usually not the case, right, Dalton? Just before we jump into this, we have a packed show today. But before we jump into this, that usually the situation is that offenses usually start much hotter than defenses, and then by the end of the season, scoring goes down. But do you think there's anything to attribute this to, or is this just kind of maybe a random 1 week thing?
Maybe the shorter preseason and fewer 8 or 9 quarterbacks didn't play a snap. I think that probably contributes. But yeah, I mean, I'm off to some hot starts on some fantasy teams despite the injuries, but I need to hold myself in check, realizing that I avoided all the top fantasy quarterbacks, and they all pretty much put up a dud this week, and that's not going to happen moving forward. Of course, there's going to be a ton of regression throughout the league. We all overrate week 1 because it's the first week, and we're all so excited. But plenty of lies out there of some stats out there that we can go over and try to get to the truth of. But I don't know. The offense was down across the league, as you said, historical compared to the last 5-10 years. But I don't expect that to be a trend moving forward.
Yeah, only 7 quarterbacks put up more than 20 fantasy points in week 1. And that's not indicative of all these guys had bad performances. And by the way, the 10 to 11 players are Brock Purdy. We'll talk about Brock later. Sam Howell and Jimmy G is quarterback 12 on the week. Quarterback 13 is friggin' Baker Mayfield. So a lot of weird quarterback performances in week 1. Mac Jones, second most fantasy points among quarterbacks. So I think a lot of that could be the explanation here for what went on. But yeah, let's waste no more time. Let's get right into it. Like I said, we have a packed show. We've got Ryan.
Don't be surprised if you see a ton of flags this weekend. Sorry, I just wanted to throw in there. I'm predicting a lot of flags to get that offense going. For we got to have those viewers, which is a breaking records apparently. So I expect more friendly to the offense officiating this weekend. Sorry, continue.
No, that's a good call. I like that call out there. But yeah, like I said, packed show here today. You know what we do here on Stat Nerd Thursday. We give you one stat you need to know for all 32 teams. We skip the Thursday night teams because we preview the Thursday night football game at the very end of the podcast. And speaking of Thursday night football, stick around for the end of the show because I sat down and spoke with Ryan Fitzpatrick. He had a lot to say about a variety of different topics, so you don't want to miss that interview. So Dalton, let's get right into this here. The way we do this is we do it by the standings. I thought this year it'd be fun to go in order from best to worst in the NFL, the current NFL draft order, courtesy of Tankathon. Actually, I love doing it this way because it does produce some hilarious results. Starting with producer Colin's favorite team. The Dallas Cowboys are currently projected to pick 32nd in the NFL draft. So again, just a fun way of doing it. This is the first time the Cowboys have been able to say Super Bowl champs in my entire life or since the early 90s. Anyways, Dallas Cowboys are our first team up here. They had a very obviously interesting week 1. I think one thing to just pull out and discuss here, week 1 routes run for the team. CeeDee Lamb predictably led the way with 20. Brandon Cooks was 18, Michael Gallup was 16, Jake Ferguson 4th with 14, and Peyton Hendershot, the other tight end, with 11. Again, it's hard to pull a ton out of the Cowboys in week 1 because they might play in that game script against Zach Wilson this week, but they're not often going to play in that kind of game script that we saw in week 1. So I thought maybe the distribution here might be an interesting thing to hit on.
Yeah, do you have any takeaways from it? I mean, it is such a tough one to gauge given the game script was just so skewed for Dallas. I mean, I love the fact that Tony Pollard got 3 carries inside the 5, which was half the number that he got all of last season, and Zeke had 16 of them. So just huge. Pollard is the new goal line back in Dallas. But I want to hear your takeaways on the routes.
I think the fact that Gallup is close to Cooks is important. He was a full-time player. He had like 17 air yards per target. He was getting those vertical looks. Then they used Cooks as kind of a speed guy as well. So it was pretty much what I expected. I thought the tight end part of this was interesting that, it isn't like Jake Ferguson's going to be running a route on 100% of the dropbacks. He also kind of flubbed a few of his opportunities as well. So I think if you were hoping for, like I was, that Jake Ferguson was a sleeper tight end, it wasn't the cleanest run out in week 1, but it was a messy game all the way around from a weather perspective too, right? It was a messy game. So I'm not freaking out about it, but again, I think that would be the one sort of just like thing to flag here is that Ferguson might be more as like a high-end tight end 2 than like a low-end tight end 1. Like he wasn't drafted to be, but some might have hoped he was.
It's just week 1, and I'm certainly not doing a victory lap, but Brandon Cooks always was surprising. He was drafted as a top 40 wide receiver in some leagues he always would dominate targets with just being the only game in town wherever he was. Mm-hmm. And now not only is he competing with CeeDee Lamb, I thought Gallup being healthier was a real thing. I thought they were, competing with each other, and that might be the case here, but maybe not. Maybe again, this was just throw it out the window when you look at their passing attack in a game they won 40-0. But Brandon Cooks is definitely looking at more target competition than he's used to, and now he's on the wrong side of 30.
Yeah, 9.5 air yards per average yards per target for Brandon Cooks, 9.3 for CeeDee Lamb, and Michael Gallup all the way up there at 17.5. He's going to have spike weeks, and I'm with you. I think that gap is a little closer there than maybe people imagine. Let's move on to the next team here, New York Jets. Obviously, we know the big news is the Aaron Rodgers absence for the rest of the season, but I wanted to talk about their run game in week 1. The Jets were second in rushing EPA in week 1. They trailed only the LA Chargers. We talked about that a lot with Austin Eckler on the show yesterday. Make sure you go back and listen to that. But the Jets, Breece Hall, awesome debut, and he doesn't even look 100% healthy. So I know you were a big Breece Hall guy, so was I. You're feeling pretty good at this point about how week 1 went.
Yeah, I'm not. I'd rather Aaron Rodgers be healthy, man. It's a big problem if that offense is sunk with Zach Wilson. I think they're going to address the quarterback situation there and probably bring in someone or make a trade. But yeah, Breece Hall looked great. He may have housed that one if he was fully healthy, but still, whatever. His GPS had him at a high speed, and he looked awesome. He just jumped off the page compared to Dalvin Cook. It's going to require some patience because his usage was not great. It required these long runs. Do you know after 2 carries, he was 3rd in the league in rushing? Which is pretty good. And it was a Monday night game, so everyone had played. But Buffalo's run defense had been leaky in the preseason. It might be an issue, but Breece Hall looked awesome. What to do now with Zach Wilson at quarterback? It really hurts Garrett Wilson's fantasy value moving forward dramatically. A guy I ranked higher than consensus and absolutely loved. That it hurts Garrett Wilson more than it does Hall, the Rodgers injury, but it really hurts the whole offense. I mean, Hall, we talked about his air yards so much. Rodgers loves targeting his backs. And now Zach Wilson, they just hid the quarterback once he came in, and they'll do more of the same there. So yeah, good and bad with my guy, Breece Hall.
Yeah, I feel much better about Breece Hall's floor after week 1. Like, I feel really confident. I know it's a rough matchup in week 2, but I feel like he is just right up there as an every week start, as maybe a high-end running back too. But I agree with you that obviously the ceiling is got to come down for everybody in this offense without Aaron Rodgers, obviously Garrett Wilson included. Let's move on to the next one here. Atlanta Falcons. The Falcons were 12th in defensive success rate in week 1. And I know we're going to sit here and talk about the offense, and we will talk about the offense, but I think it was notable that the defense performed really well in week 1, and it was a bad opponent. I mean, good God, we'll talk Panthers later on in the show, obviously, but I did think the way they flew around the ball, the way they were getting after the quarterback was really important. So I don't know. I think if we're talking about run-heavy game scripts, the Falcons might be in even more run-heavy game scripts if their defense is good, because that has not been the case the last few years.
Yeah, Bryce Young struggled particularly downfield, but credit to the Falcons defense as well. The Algier Bijan split was quite interesting, but Bijan still saw so many targets, and he was running so many routes like a receiver. And obviously, we're all panicking over Drake London, but if that was more of a case of the Falcons defense being good than Carolina's offense struggling, it's great news for both running backs because they're going to be just so, specifically Algier is just going to be so game dependent. I mean, it's perfect when games work like last week, but moving forward, when they have to pass more, we'll see a lot more Bijan in the second half when they're not nursing leads.
I agree with you. I think that if you have Tyler Algier, I think in games that might be close, you can consider starting him, but he's going to end up being sort of like a volatile wide receiver, right? Where there are going to be some games where he has 7 carries for 40 yards or something like that, and he makes the most of his looks, but it doesn't really help you that much in fantasy. Just the next 4 games for the Falcons: Packers, Lions, Jags, Houston. We don't totally know what all those teams are like, but Green Bay had a nice week 1 run out. The Lions obviously had a great week 1 run out. So did the Jags, and even the Texans. They're a team that I think you can run on a ton. So that might be the one week I see here where both those backs are going to be very viable.
Yep, it's definitely going to be matchup dependent when it comes to Algier. But boy, his usage at the goal line is going to be a thorn in Robinson's fantasy manager's side. It seems like all year long.
Yep, and I'm not victory lapping this at all, but I made the point that why I was a little concerned with Bijan Robinson as a first round pick. Not that I didn't love taking him, whatever, but he was my least favorite first round pick because I thought Tyler Algier was going to play a real role in this offense, and you kind of had to either make them lead the NFL in rush attempts, which I still don't think they're going to lead, be that run heavy. I think at some point they will open this thing up a little bit. Although, again, week 1 not looking good for that part of the prediction. But also that, I think Algier was so good as a rookie that they want to get him involved. They want to keep him out there, and that is going to be a thorn in Bijan's side. Not that he's not going to be a running back 1 or a great fantasy pick, but just you're always going to be hoping for just a little bit more from Bijan. But I mean, how many running backs can you not say that about at this point?
I should have stuck to my guns when I originally made that Judy London bet with you like 3 months ago. I was like, I'm out on this. It's too conservative, but nope. I got talked back into Drake London and absolutely was drafting.
Well, is either one of us winning that bet right now?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
I don't know.
We're both losers there, but I hate the Drake. That was wild to see a goose egg like that, and it's such a good player.
Yeah, and really week 2 is not an ideal spot either because obviously he's coming off 0 points, but Jair Alexander is a really good cornerback, and I think that Packers pass defense is going to take a step. Next one up here, Baltimore Ravens. Talk about a receiver who had a great week 1. Zay Flowers led all pass catchers by a lot in week 1 with a 60% first read target share according to Fantasy Points data. AJ Brown was second at 47.1%. Dalton, I love Zay Flowers. We talked about this a lot on the pod, and I was ready to react really heavily to whichever Ravens receiver had the best kind of role in week 1. And it's definitely Zay Flowers, man. So I know he got some design touches, screens and stuff like that. I understand that that's not going to be but it's not going to be the case every week. It'd be one thing if he was freaking Tavon Austin or something like that, but he's not that guy from a skill set standpoint. So I don't really hold against him that his team thought he was so good that they should get the ball in his hands by any means possible.
Yeah, not that I wasn't drafting Zay Flowers, but I'll take the loss in Bateman right now. I loved him and thought he could be the number 1 receiver right away, and he was the clear third peg here with Odell Beckham. Odell Beckham drew pass interference on both of his first 2 targets, so the targets don't even look like quite as much as he truly was involved, and he made a great catch down the field later in the game. So it might take an injury before my guy Bateman to become relevant because he did that without Mark Andrews, by the way, too. Zay Flowers, you took the words out of my mouth. Yes, his design. If you removed the design targets, that first read mark goes from 60% to 37%, first in the league to 18th%. Chris Wecht tweeted that. And again, that was without Mark Andrews. But the guy passes the eye test. Clearly, Monken he's doing that because I think he called 2 screens inside the red zone even. So the guy wants to get his playmakers the ball. It's wheels up. You're starting Zay Flowers right now. Flex it, whatever. Flex. He's locked in your flex with the usage he got in that offense. The touchdowns will come. Yes, they looked a little rusty on offense. Maybe Houston's defense is going to be a little better than we expected.
Mm-hmm.
They had some signs in their coaching upgrade there too. So it's kind of interesting there. And obviously Baltimore had suffered some offensive line injuries, and that could affect the passing attack. But obviously, Zay Flowers looked great. He might be the best rookie wide receiver this year. A great week 1.
You're so right, though, about the Texas defense. And I've been raising this point, like that I don't think they're going to be this cupcake. And look, maybe they get shredded in week 2, okay? That's certainly possible. So I don't want to come out here and say – and I think the Ravens' pass offense was not functioning at its best just yet because they're working in a new system. They don't have Mark Andrews. That I think Rashad Bateman's going to play a lot more as the season goes on, but he missed so much time in the offseason rehabbing this foot injury. I'm not like, I think from a fantasy perspective, yeah, like you really can't play Rashad Bateman and he can't help you in fantasy as long as he plays that role. But I don't expect him to play that role the entire year. But Texans pass defense, week 2, they'll get Anthony Richardson. They'll get the Jags in week 3. That's like a real test for them. I think the first 2 weeks, they're going to look really good. Even though Richardson, we'll talk about him later, exceeded expectations. I think we'll see more about them later on. Let's move on to your Niners, buddy. Hey, this stat I think is really interesting for Brock Purdy. 24.5% of Brock Purdy's passing yards came from yards after the catch in week 1. That was the lowest among week 1 starting quarterbacks. We talked about some, kind of uninspiring quarterback performances in week 1. Going back and watching that game, I think Brock Purdy played really, really, really well. And I think it's officially time. If you're still talking about Brock Purdy as a game manager, it's time to throw that label out. Because that dude plays off script. He adds to the offense way more than Jimmy Garoppolo does. The immense trust between him and Brandon Ayuk. And I think that's really something to highlight here too. The touchdown play where the safeties kind of follow Deebo Samuel and it's just one-on-one there for Brandon Ayuk on kind of like a dig or a post route. And Purdy is looking at Deebo's way the entire time, turns back to Ayuk and just fires that thing in there with like that, and that element of the offense was never there in previous iterations of the 49ers offense. So I'm coming out of week 1 really, really high on Brock Purdy specifically in this offense.
Yeah, beat writers were saying in such a twist that Purdy turned out to be more athletic than Trey Lance. I mean, that part is what's really wild. I know Andy Barron's mocked me for comparing Purdy to Lamar Jackson, but they had the same shuttle speed or whatever, the short area quickness, and it shows on the field. So Purdy's yards after the catch suffered last week because he was actually throwing it downfield. I know
exactly.
He didn't have one attempt, 20 yards. Technically, but that throw to Ayuk was across the field and 30 air yards, and he went 10 of 12 for 161 yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 picks on throws 10 plus yards. So that intermediate area, he's just become the best in the league. Obviously, the coaching schemes him up there. Brock Purdy became the first starter in NFL history to post a 95 plus passer rating in his first 6 starts, the first ever to lead his team to 6 straight wins with 2+ TDs in his first 6 starts. Brock Purdy is him. It's pretty cool to see. Fantasy wise, I mean, they really did, take the foot off the gas in the second half there, and it shows his limitations here. But man, if these guys can stay healthy, that offense is just cooking. And Ayuk is the guy. I mean, Deebo will have his games for sure, but man, you were so right. One of the best route runners in the league, just cooking DBs.
Yeah, I think the Purdy to Ayuk connection is going to be really special. Ayuk won offensive player of the week in the NFC or whatever I saw before we hopped on the show. The era of do you know ball, being a great do you know ball test is how good is Brandon Ayuk. That's going to shut now at this point because I think people will be hip to that in 5 weeks from now. The Purdy to Ayuk connection is a real big reason that stat is a thing.
And his block downfield. I mean, Shanahan put him in the doghouse for now. We got a full complete player, just baller. Yeah.
Yeah, and that doesn't happen for a lot of guys. A lot of guys get in the doghouse and then it just they just go down from there. So it's really a credit to Ayuk as a dude that he used that to work himself out of it. Yeah, I mean he was. Yeah, I just love Brandon Ayuk. So excited about it. The Purdy to Ayuk connection is going to be awesome. Next one up here, Detroit Lions. Jahmyr Gibbs ran a route on just 19.4% of the team dropbacks in week 1. You were a big Jahmyr Gibbs guy, Dalton. What's your level of concern after his week 1 usage?
Gibbs was among the league leaders in broken tackles, and he barely touched the ball. But my level of concern is definitely medium because David Montgomery just took all the work. He's going to get the goal line carries there. I'm not sure he can withstand that type of workload over a full season. But yeah, you have to be some concern for a guy drafted that high. You just historically don't see his team use him so little. Although there has been some week 1s where the backs have gotten their feet wet. So I think expect a much bigger game this week. It's a nice setup, and I think Gibbs is going to be totally fine. But you would be lying to yourself if you spent a 3rd round pick on him and didn't feel like I think in some of the bigger money league drafts, he went from a 3rd round pick to a mid 5th round pick after that first game over the weekend. They had drafts, from Thursday night over the weekend, and frankly, that makes sense to me. I don't think it was an overreaction. His usage was a little bit less than we wanted, but the dude passed the eye test like so crazy. Good, yeah. And if he didn't fall down at first, I was like skeptical if it would have been a touchdown, but another angle showed he might have had that 12-yard touchdown run if he didn't fall down too. And of course, his fantasy line would have looked dramatically different if that happened. So I'm a little concerned without a question due to the usage, which I don't expect to fully change moving forward, anything dramatic. But the guy looks awesome, and upside totally remains if Montgomery were to go down as a top 5 type upside as well.
All right, next team up here, Jacksonville Jaguars. This one comes in from Jared Smalla of Draft Sharks. Travis Etienne's 83% route rate in week 1, easily a career high. He never topped 67% last year. Again, I said this a lot in the offseason, and I'll say it out after week 1. Talk a lot about the pass game. Talk a lot about Calvin Ridley and Trevor Lawrence. And oh my God, is that connection like already on fire? But I think Travis Etienne had a really nice week 1 run out if you're counting on him as a potential, I think, running back 1 at this point.
I absolutely love him. I ranked him disgustingly high. I grabbed him in any 3rd round. He fell to me. Feeling pretty good, but Tank Bigsby's going to be a problem at the goal line, it feels like, for the whole year. Although the rookie did not look great, and he caused that fumble that resulted in a touchdown. Etienne had that electrifying touchdown run, one of the best plays of the day. But most exciting, he had never had more than 3 catches in a game in his NFL career, and he records 5 in the first game this year. Lawrence is not a guy who targets his back a ton, but if we can get that usage moving forward, he's going to score some long touchdowns because he's just special. Again, 45 more touchdowns throughout his college career than Bigsby. So those will come as well in an offense led by budding MVP candidate Lawrence with Ridley now. I love it, man. Wheels up, Etienne.
Couldn't agree more. All right, number 8 here. Las Vegas Raiders. Shocking. Both Jacoby Myers and Devontae Adams drew 43.8% of the Raiders' first read targets. Again, that comes in from Fantasy Points data. More on Jacoby Myers. 0.43 targets per route run. Really good. 41.5% of the team air yards. I know he comes out of this game with I couldn't believe he walked off the field. Massive hit. McDaniel said today he is still in the NFL's concussion protocol. That being said, Dalton, when Jacoby Myers gets back out there, is this going to be one of those offenses that's, look, I don't think the Raiders are about to be the Dolphins from last year, but from like a concentration perspective, it was these 2 dudes, like identically 43.8% of the team first read targets. Do the math. That means no one else is really getting looked at in this offense. And I love Jacoby Myers. I think he's a great route runner. I think the Patriots whiffed on that one by replacing him with Juju Smith-Schuster. That terrible decision there. As much as Juju gets too much crap, he's just not as good as Jacoby Myers. Myers, really good route runner. He can play outside because he can beat man coverage. That's something I hammer a lot with Jacoby. And he's just a separator. And his game lines up so well with Jacoby or with Jimmy Garoppolo, the in-breaking routes, the slants, the digs, all that type of stuff, crossing routes. He's not the most exciting player. And obviously, again, we're dealing with an injury right now, but I'm always on the lookout for these concentrated offenses, concentrated passing games. And I kind of think the Raiders might be one of those offenses right now.
Myers was one of the most eye-opening players in week 1. Highly impressive. What was New England thinking replacing him with Juju Smith-Schuster's knee? And as you highlighted it, Las Vegas, the most concentrated offense in the league right now because Jacobs getting all the work in their backfield. Expect bigger games from him. Adams, Myers, he might have to sit out this week. That was a scary hit, but he looked like a guy that was going to be possibly startable moving forward. My guy Garoppolo, I remain skeptical he can stay healthy. I really hope I'm wrong, but Aiden O'Connell looks so capable of placing him, and got to give credit to Jimmy G, the dude, the nerd stats, the CPOE plus EPA. He led the league week 1, and it's funnily enough, his EPA per play with Shanahan now ranks 3rd behind his tenure with the Patriots and his tenure with the Raiders. So it's time we start thinking, did Shanahan hold back Jimmy Garoppolo?
Yeah, there's your headline right there. Write that in a column for the website, Dalton. Next 2 weeks for the Raiders, it's the Bills and the Steelers. Not great matchups, but we'll get a test here on this. But that concentration can be really good for players, even in rough spots like that. Again, I'll just say, I think Jacoby Myers gets a revenge game against the Patriots in week 6. I think he I would have put him in the conversation for most underrated receivers in the NFL going into this year, and I really feel that way coming out of week one.
Listen, I'm leaning Bills here in Survivor, like the setup coming off a loss, Raiders coming off a win, big almost 10-point spread here, maybe Myers out. And I got to give the audience, alert them that Matt Harmon was indeed not a coward and he did sign up for my Survivor pool. But that said,
did I lose in week one? I feel like I lost.
I wasn't going to say that. I wasn't going to say that part. But, honestly, I was in on
I'm not a coward, but I am an idiot. So
I wasn't going to say that part. I wouldn't have. I was avoiding the Vikings. I was not avoiding the Seahawks, which was your pick. I was with you there. I'm shocked at that turnaround, and I considered them as well and surprised at that outcome. But my point I was trying to make is Josh Jacobs, as someone considering the Bills, I'm worried he could have a big game here. Again, this Bills defense looks a little vulnerable against the run, and just because he didn't do it last week against Denver doesn't mean he can't run wild here. So I do worry about that as someone who's considering taking Buffalo in Survivor.
All right, next team up here, number 9, Philadelphia Eagles. We're skipping them for the Thursday night preview at the end of the show. Number 10, Los Angeles Rams. Kyren Williams. Freaking Kyren Williams, 74.5% of the snaps in quarters 1 to 3. It was 25.5% for Cam Akers in quarters 1 to 3. And he also, Kyren Williams, owned 100% of the 2-minute snaps, according to Fantasy Life. So I ask you, Dalton, rest of season, Kyren Williams or Cam Akers? And I'll just put one note of context on this before you answer. It's worth noting that in week 1 last year, they were going to put Kyren Williams as the start. Like, he was going to run ahead of Cam Akers as the number 2 back behind Darrell Henderson, who's obviously not on the roster, but he suffered an injury on like the opening kickoff or something like that. So should we even be surprised that this was the case in week 1?
And beat writers throughout summer kept warning us that that Williams is going to be a big part of this backfield, and yet Akers' ADP didn't budge. It's Kyren Williams for me. I wrote about this in my Numbers Do Lie column that came out Wednesday. Cam Akers right now leads the league in carries. He got the start as well. He did that while playing 4 snaps in the first half. I mean, Akers somehow has the 3rd most touches in the league, but ran 25 fewer routes, played half the number of snaps, and saw a 1/3 of the red zone carries compared to his teammate Williams here. So this came down to a game script that's unlikely to be a common theme for the Rams, nursing big leads in the 4th quarter. And we even have talked about performance here. Williams looked like the better player. The yards per carry, the stuff rate, the yards per carry after contact, all that stuff. So I think when game scripts become different, and by the way, the Rams finished top 4 in offensive plays, but bottom 7 in seconds per snap. So things are going to just be so different moving forward for this team. And it looks like they very much so trust Kyren Williams, who was one of the most used backs, receiving backs in all of football week 1. I mean, he was running a route all the time. I think he was top 5 in routes run by running backs. So Kyren Williams is my answer.
Love it. I think I agree. Number 11, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Mike Evans, 26.5% of the team targets in week 1. Chris Godwin, just 17.6 with a 5.8 average depth of target. I'll ask you the same question. Rest of season, would you rather have Mike Evans or Chris Godwin? Because in most drafts, Godwin went, I wouldn't say well ahead of Evans, but was the guy that people would have taken the chance on more often than Evans with Baker Mayfield.
I was writing before that I liked Evans better than Godwin, so you're asking someone who's has a little bit of a bias here. But I just feared that Chris Godwin relied a ton on design targets last year. The new offensive coordinator did not use those. A totally new quarterback. Yes, Brady threw the ball a lot, but it's not like Mike Evans' target share was anything crazy. This is a dude who had 27 touchdowns combined the previous 2 years, 1,000-yard game, 1,000-yard season every year he's been in the league. So I slightly lean Evans, but they're like close. I rank them back to back. Godwin will have his days, and he made an incredible catch to help ice this game and knock out a ton of survivor entries who did have the Vikings. So appreciate you, Godwin.
Keith had more air yards in week 1 than Chris Godwin, and he just had a great point on the design targets. 1 design target in week 1, same amount for Mike Evans. So it's interesting. All right. Let's move on to the next one here. Number 12, Miami Dolphins. I'm actually going to say we're going to skip Miami Dolphins because we talk a ton about the Dolphins, and we have a great stat for the Dolphins with Ryan Fitzpatrick later on the show. But Dalton, I will allow you to victory lap real quick here. I think you were. I will talk about. I admit I was wrong. I think you were more accurate on Tua this year from a fantasy quarterback perspective than I was.
It was a great matchup indoors on turf, and their three guys are healthy. That no one said that he wasn't going to be great when they were healthy. I think we need him to stay healthy still. But the YPA, man, this is just special. You see all that movement and how many guys are wide open. Dude, Tua underthrew multiple deep balls too. Like he could have had a 500 burger easily. Like he was great, but not even close to perfect. And just, wow, Tyreek Hill is tough to guard in football field.
Yeah. And also, I know you can sit here and say, like, all right, there's the offense and there's the receivers, but Tua's a good quarterback. And I never said that he was not a good quarterback. It has nothing to do with his ability. Again, it's just the fragility of this thing. But I'll give him a lot of credit for actually, you know what? I won't say it because, again, it comes up in the Ryan Fitzpatrick interview. So we'll just listen to that at the end of the show. Number 13 here, Cleveland Browns. Elijah Moore had a really nice week one run out. I will note that Amari Cooper was a little injured during this game, but nevertheless, I think it was a good week one for Elijah Moore. 24% of the air yards, 80% of the routes run. He was second on the team in first read target share to Amari Cooper, obviously 22.7% for Elijah Moore. So no, he didn't have a big performance in the stat sheet in week one, but as an Elijah Moore guy, I think this is encouraging usage.
Yeah, I think he's a flex option moving forward. We're both Elijah Moore guys. How are we feeling about Deshaun Watson? That was an ugly pick. He saved his fantasy day with that run. Bad weather, obviously. Burrow had the worst game of his career. So we don't know yet, basically.
I don't feel great. I will say I don't feel great, but look, I mean, he's never gonna. The two things that bother me the most with him right now is pocket presence. That looks like just completely, not even close to like functional enough. Like that's got to get better. And then the second thing for me is his accuracy, like his ball placement. Like that's poor. It's not where it needs to be. So I'm a little concerned just about that. But I think Watson was always going to fit somewhere between where he was with Houston and where he was last year with Cleveland. I think he's going to be somewhere in the middle there. And I still kind of feel that way.
Nick Chubb, 4 targets, huge. It may not show up on the box score, but could be massive for him moving forward. Bigger games will come.
24.1% off target percentage for Deshaun Watson in week one. That was 5th most in terms of guys who started the entire game. So yeah, not that accuracy is a problem. Next one here, Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen led the NFL by a lot with 28 dropbacks out of 12 personnel. To put that in context, Daniel Jones was second with 12. 12, Dalton. So a lot of 12s going on here, but 12 personnel seems to be the base offense for Josh Allen and the Bills, which is really good news for Dalton Kincaid, the rookie tight end.
Yeah, interesting how they used him, though, because his ADOT was nothing. It was all at the line of scrimmage, but entirely encourage. My guy Gabe Davis didn't exactly assert himself as a number 2 option there either. So, yeah, absolutely some bigger games ahead for Dalton Kincaid. And Josh Allen just struggles every time he faces the Jets. It's a really, really good defense that allowed the fewest yards per play last season while dealing with horrible quarterback on offense. So, I mean, this is one of the best defenses in entire football, and they showed it. I mean, Allen should have played more conservative given the game situation, but he was going against a tough opponent. Now he gets a home matchup against the Raiders, and expect all these guys to have big, big games, including James Cook.
I don't know what it is, but they know how to get that like chaos Josh Allen to come out every time he plays the Jets. Next one up here, Washington Commanders. Sam Howell in week one under pressure. He's under pressure for 16 of 39 dropbacks. He was 5 of 10 with a 5.9 yards per attempt, 1 touchdown to 1 interception. Cardinals defense played well. Put a pin in the Cardinals here for a second. I'll give him some credit there. But Sam Howell definitely talk about chaos. He looked like a chaotic quarterback in week one. He's got to speed up. Colin just made a note. I was going to say the exact same thing in the chat. His internal clock is slow. Like he's got to pick it up. He takes way too many sacks, but he's starting his second game. I'm not saying like, oh, it's over for Sam Howell, but that was, I think, the most concerning thing coming out of week one.
Yeah, any thoughts on Eric Bieniemy's game calling? It was a lot of sacks and a lot of dropbacks for Washington as a big, big weakness against Arizona. As a guy, I mean, I had the Commanders in Survivor, so I was watching that, and I don't know. It should have been a little more Brian Robinson, a little less drop back Howell against this when you're such an advantage. You know, with Joshua Dobbs providing no threat. But I don't know. I was not impressed with Bieniemy's first game call, but maybe I'm just overreacting because I nearly lost Survivor. What are your thoughts?
I wouldn't say that I noted like anything really egregious or anything, but It is worth
But that's
noting
going to be a tough
get...
offensive line, man, for poor Sam Howell, with whom we both love, and he's going to get there fantasy-wise. But yes, he holds on the ball too long as well, young guy learning. But that offensive line's a problem for everyone on offense.
Yep, that is going to be an issue. That's for sure going to be an issue. They got to get ways to get the ball out of his hands faster. Like I said, he's got to speed up that internal clock, but they've got to do a little bit more to help him out there too. Next team up here, New Orleans Saints. Derek Carr led the NFL with 27.3% of his passes going for 20-plus yards. Patrick Mahomes was second with 17.9%. So almost a 10% gap there for Derek Carr and Patrick Mahomes. I mean, that has been the criticism with Derek Carr a lot. Push that ball. But he's done a lot better with that the last few years. I think, John Gruden, some credit to him here. He helped get that out of Derek Carr. Carr's got bad habits. He's not a perfect quarterback. He wasn't perfect in week 1, and this was a great matchup to push the ball down the field with the Tennessee Titans. But for guys like Chris Olave, for Rashid Shaheed, who I've been saying since we started seeing, this dude can play. I think those two guys are big winners coming out of week 1.
Yeah, I did not see this coming. Perfect pass funnel defense to face for it to happen last week. But Olave's that dude. So happy to see him return to the game. At one point, it looked like he left with a potential serious injury. And Shaheed, man, he was on a lot of my benches because I loved grabbing him later in drafts. But I did not expect him to make that presence felt immediately with the healthy Michael Thomas. But you look at all the underlying stats with him last year, and it just screamed upside if he ever got, the volume. So, yeah, great to see Derek Carr, who showed up in much better shape this season. He was all yoked compared to last year. The photos were out there, and apparently it's carried over. Now, can we get Jameis Winston on the Jets?
Their problem is their rookie quarterback, Jake Haener, is suspended for 6 games for a performance-enhancing drug. So I think if that didn't happen, there might be a chance with Jameis, but I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, plus also, you don't want... I know people love Jameis, but I can't imagine a worse fit for hey, we got a really good defense and a really good run game. Let's just get somebody that can keep the train on the tracks. And obviously that's not Zach Wilson either, but could you imagine Jameis Winston? I mean, nobody takes the train off the tracks faster than Jameis Winston.
It's more important who gets Garrett Wilson the ball.
I know. I get it. I feel so bad for Garrett Wilson. Did you see that interview?
I haven't. I have it bookmarked. I was too busy getting ready because it's morning for me over here. But I haven't. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm going to watch the interview afterwards. So he's pretty happy about the situation. I take it.
Oh yeah, he's thrilled. No, I feel so bad for Garrett. Yeah. I mean, it seems like those dudes really connected on, and it seems like Rodgers connected with a lot of these guys on a real human level. That part of it just freaking sucks from a sports perspective and a human perspective, and from a football perspective. And I know Garrett Wilson knows this. There aren't many guys. I mean, think about how often I sit here and complain about guys like Allen Robinson who waste their entire careers with bad quarterbacks. Guys like, Terry McLaurin, bad quarterbacks forever. Michael Pittman, maybe Anthony Richardson's going to rescue him. And now you've got Garrett Wilson in his second season. He's about to be plucked from one of the worst quarterback wilderness situations I've ever seen, and not just be dropped with a good quarterback, like a viable quarterback, like a future Hall of Famer. And it's over in 4 seconds or, in 75 seconds. That's the amount of game time Aaron Rodgers had or something like that, 4 plays.
That's so frustrating. The same number as Adams. I mean, the rapport was there. He was just going to feed him. They don't have Elijah Moore, Alan Lazard, Randall Cobb. I mean, they were going to have to throw the ball. I mean, Rodgers was going to throw it so many times. Garrett Wilson led the NFL in targets per game last year without Zach Wilson as a rookie. Crazy, man. It's frustrating. You do think they're going to move. They're going to look elsewhere, though, right? If you had to guess, versus Zach Wilson versus do they bring in someone else? I'd be surprised if they don't bring in someone. And I mean to start over him. I mean,
who are they bringing in, man? Carson Wentz?
Yeah, no. Yeah, that would be. All right, maybe you're right. Yeah,
people,
all right.
I think Zach,
it's depressing.
It is depressing, dude, but I don't. You know what else is depressing? That when my entire Twitter timeline, and I said this on the solo reaction I did for the pod, so sorry for repeating myself, but what's depressing is people on my Twitter time maybe they called Matt Ryan. I'm like, good God, did you watch that last year? I mean, we just lived through this, and I know
Sam Darnold.
He's too important to your Niners, pal.
Yeah, I know he is. I know Trey Lance. They should inquire Trey Lance. Yeah, I know. I mean, I hope Zach Wilson can improve. Seems like a nice kid. Rooting for him, but yeah, it's just their offense becomes a shell. I mean, they hit him on Monday night.
All right. Speaking of the Packers, we're not getting a first round pick for Aaron Rodgers. That's for sure. I remember when that trade happened and everybody's like 65% of the snaps if he play. That's easy. That's so low. And he's going to play like what, 0.65% of the snaps the entire year. All right. So the Green Bay Packers, Jordan Love ranked number 1 in EPA per dropback in week 1. Jordan Love, really nice performance, but some of this is designery stuff and some of this is the Bears. How are you feeling about Jordan Love coming out of week 1?
Oh, I'm feeling great. I mean, he absolutely missed some throws Sunday. He was not perfect, but dude put up a great stat line without Christian Watson making his first start of the year. Musgrave doesn't fall down at the 5. His numbers look even better on that improvised long play. Musgrave almost had 2 plays that he could have made his stat line look far, far better. So yeah, I mean, if you have Jordan Love and you waited in Superflex, you're pumped this week after what we just saw. Yeah, absolutely. And Christian Watson hopefully can return soon. Aaron Rodgers' injury would not help because A.J. Dillon is just such a dramatic downgrade. It's so clear now. And how sick was that fourth down catch in which he hurt his hamstring?
Aaron Jones,
Aaron Jones, yes. But yeah, Jordan Love would like to get these reinforcements back, Aaron Jones and Christian Watson, but man, it was an encouraging start.
100% agree. Yeah, Aaron Jones, big injury to watch here. Number 18, New York Giants. Paris Campbell led the team in routes run 70%. Paris Campbell was 1. Then it goes Darius Slayton, Darren Waller, Isaiah Hodgins, Saquon Barkley, and Dan Bellinger before any of the 4th receivers there. Again, I don't know that there's a lot to take away from the Giants in week 1, but I just wanted to note the receiver rotation here because I think that will be important to track, and it will change a lot throughout the course of the season. But to me, Dalton, this is one of those remember when Tony Sparano, not Tony's. Jeez, you know what I mean. He did the whole bury the you just leave it in rest in peace. But he did the whole bury the ball thing or whatever like that or something like that. That needs to actually be done here with this game for the Giants.
Yeah, my only takeaway is I hope Waller sat out most of that second half just because of the lopsided score and his hamstring's fine. And Daniel Jones's numbers against the Cowboys career-wise now are just downright ugly, but expect them all to bounce back in a big way in the desert.
All right, next one up here, number 19, Carolina Panthers. Bryce Young in his debut on throws of 10-plus yards downfield. 2 of 12 passing, 23 yards. 2 interceptions, basically the exact same interception, by the way, 0.0 passer rating. Bro, tough run out for the Panthers pass game. Miles Sanders, people think he's going to catch a ton of balls this year. I hate to say it.
So I don't want to fall for main character syndrome here. And I know a lot of people criticize Sanders as receiving, but when you went the voice on FFL, I felt like you were subtweeting me directly with all my talk about that.
Way more than just you. No. Way more than just you.
The voice was a bit much, I just got to say. But anyway, he did get a ton of targets. And yeah, I got to capitulate. He did get a lot of targets, although Hubbard is going to be a thing and a little bit. But Sanders got the targets, although I believe right before we started recording, did they sign Tariq Cohen? Is that Carolina that did? Maybe they came in to take all those targets. They saw one game of Miles Sanders. They're like, let's get Cohen back. He's been in the league in 3 years. We need to get him in. But anyway, I will capitulate in week 1. He did see a lot of targets, but I didn't appreciate the voice.
Hey, the voice is not directly for you. The voice is nameless, faceless, fantasy, the people out there, okay? Things I don't agree with. People hate the voice, man. People that work on the show love the voice. People that there's some people hate the voice, and if it bothers you, again, I think maybe you have to be like Dalton. Maybe I'm talking about you. If the voice bothers you, maybe you have to look inside like Dalton Del Don here. All right, we're skipping the Minnesota Vikings at number 20 for the Thursday night preview. Number 21, Arizona Cardinals. It's gonna be tough to think about a stat for the Arizona Cardinals every single week, but I'll note they were 13th in defensive success rate in week 1. So, Dalton, how much of that was Sam Howell, new offensive coordinator, guy getting his second NFL start? Or is Jonathan Gannon got a little something going on there on defense?
It's a great question because a lot of people are probably considering using the Giants in a big survivor pool this week, considering, the buy low theory with them coming off a dud here in Arizona. They're tanking. Dobbs did not look great, but was that defense real? And it wasn't just Washington's shaky offensive line. And I mean, they had a healthy McLaurin and Dotson and Logan Thomas, and they defended them pretty well. So maybe the New York has to play across the country here. And it's not going to be a cakewalk. The spread is what it is too. It's 4.5. It's not 10. So yeah, I'm very curious here to see how Arizona's defense, are they going to be a plucky team, or was week 1 an aberration and they are going to be a doormat moving forward?
And that will tell us a lot because then they get Dallas, they get San Francisco, they get Cincinnati, they get the Rams coming off a great week one, the LA Rams. I mean, dude, that's a rough schedule there after the Giants. So if the Giants don't bounce back in week two, I think we got to consider maybe, hey, the Cardinals defense might be a little bit better than expected.
Yeah.
Seattle Seahawks. Geno Smith was under pressure on 14 dropbacks and completed just 45.5% of his passes for 4.7 yards per attempt. This is important, Dalton, because they got whooped up front in week one, did the Seattle Seahawks, because both their starting tackles, Abe Lucas and Charles Cross, like two ascending young players, got injured in week one, and they had to just go sign Jason Peters, who's 41 years old, playing offensive tackle Jason Peters. So I was really bullish on the Seahawks offense going into this year, and I will admit that those two tackles being out makes me a little nervous.
They had 0 first downs, one by penalty in the second half at home against the Rams last week, 0.9 yards per play. They need some reinforcements to the offensive line. It's a big problem. Obviously no one cares about Joe Burrow's bad game, but Geno Smith coming off the career year at his stage of his career, it's kind of like, let's hope there's not the beginning of regression here. My guy JSN coming off the wrist surgery was pretty invisible there, but boy, this is a spot to possibly bounce back in the Coors Field indoors against Detroit, high scoring game. This is a spot for Geno and company to bounce back.
Yeah, let's hope that we got to see a big bounce back here in week one, or week two. But it's just tough. The offensive tackle injuries might be a problem, especially Aiden Hutchinson. He flashed a lot in week one.
Absolutely. He was. Yeah, they should have shown him a little bit more on TV, but I thought he played well.
Yeah, I would love to hear more. I would have loved to hear more from his parents. I would have loved to hear more from his parents.
Yeah. That's a good point, though. He could wreak havoc. He was one of the best players on the field, and that is going to be an issue for Seattle. But I trust Carroll will get it straight this week. And Peters, is that who is coming in?
Jason Peters, 41 years old. My God.
Yeah.
All right, number 23 here, Chicago Bears. Justin Fields, 3.5 average depth of target, ranked 34th among quarterbacks in week one. If you haven't been watching JT O'Sullivan, QB School on Twitter,
so good.
Just filleting the Bears offense. I mean, go check that out. I hadn't watched spoiler alert, I was not rushing to watch it. I got a lot of film to watch. So I got a lot of players to chart, stuff like that. I wouldn't rush into the film to check out the Bears offense. So I cannot believe, I hadn't watched the film yet. I cannot believe some of the stuff that JT was highlighting. But I think the thing that is really important here, and there's a lot of concerning stuff with Justin Fields after week one. The most concerning thing to me is how often he is turning down like deep throws, like throws that DJ Moore and like other guys are open, like that are really, really good throws. And that's the thing you would think about with Justin Fields is he's always been a big game hunter. I don't know if they've forced him to overcorrect, but I mean, 3.5 average depth of target, you're turning, like, I love fantasy people. And look, maybe they end up being right about Roschon Johnson. Like, oh my God, Roschon Johnson, 7 targets in week one. The offense stunk. And the quarterback played poorly. I don't give a crap about his targets in week one because you got the quarterback out here. If Roschon Johnson gets those type of targets every week, congrats to your fantasy team, but the Bears are sunk.
Yeah, absolutely. It was, first of all, Khalil Herbert started that game and he rotated a little bit with Foreman in the first half. And then Johnson got 92% of his stats in garbage time. Now, he impressed at a couple of those runs. He trucked someone. And guess what? The Bears might feature garbage time all year long. So absolutely. I'm not saying that there's something like, oh, got to be Herbert's. I mean, Herbert led the league in rush yards over expectation last year, was a starter, still has potential. But Johnson could be, eat all these targets late in games. By the way, Justin Fields, most running quarterbacks don't target running backs. He targeted his running backs 15 times in week one, and DJ Moore just twice. So I guess it was the last coaching staff did try to change this philosophy of him, and Fields, as you said, was great in college downfield, and he has a strong arm. So this is curious. And as you said, JT O'Sullivan pointing out 2 guys running the same exact routes in the back of the end zone. Chase Claypool not given full effort. It's bad from top to bottom here. And it's not helping anyone in fantasy land.
No, it's bad. All right. Let's cleanse our palate with the New England Patriots here at number 24. I will say I think Bill O'Brien is going to help this offense out a lot. But most interesting thing here, Mac Jones led the NFL with 58 dropbacks in week one, most among all quarterbacks. So that because of that, 7 players ended up having 4+ targets, and that was with Devontae Parker out of the game and Juju barely running a route on less than 40% of the dropbacks. So just kind of want your state of the state with this passing game, and that of course does include the fact that Ezekiel Elliott's getting drawn up targets in week 1, man.
Yeah, Zeke's a bit of a problem for Stevenson. A pick six is often the best thing for your fantasy quarterback. And it's funny that it happened against Hurts because we kept preaching they're going to regress and have to throw the ball more in second halves. And here we are. The Eagles immediately get a pick six on defense, and Hurts has a 16-0 lead immediately. But Mac Jones, it's great to see fantasy ability to be the number 2 QB in a week. I bet many people didn't have that in his range of outcomes, including myself. And that's even without my guy, Devontae Parker. Kendrick Bourne, I was not rushing to add on the waiver wire this week. But Hunter Henry absolutely can be a top 15 fantasy tight end. And nice to see that Jones has this capability. It wasn't always pretty, but man, whatever, getting an ugly game like that, you don't see that often in a Belichick game.
All right, next one up here. You mentioned Deontay Johnson earlier, Pittsburgh Steelers, number 25. Jacob Gibbs does great work. He has this stat. Without Deontay Johnson on the field in week 1, and God, pour one out for Deontay, man. Still no touchdowns on the season. Routes
He'll never
run.
score again.
He'll never score again. Oh, God. All right. Routes run after Deontay Johnson left the field in week 1. George Pickens, 28. Allen Robinson, 28. Calvin Austin, 24. Targets, 5. Allen Robinson, 4. Calvin Austin, 3. George Pickens. I mean, still just running clear out routes, baby. Receiving yards, Allen Robinson, 53. Calvin Austin, 31. George Pickens, 17. Dalton, can you talk me out of Allen Robinson?
My original instinct was, of course, Pickens gets a fantasy boost, but Jacob's right. I mean, he's just running those clear out routes. It may not be a boost. Calvin Austin in deeper leagues. Hey, you said Allen Robinson, and it proved to come true, and it's only going to see more targets with my guy Deontay out. It looks like the next 4 weeks, and I believe then they have a bye week 5, so we may not.
It is up to 4 weeks. So that was the report, I think, from Gary Dulac. I'm sorry if I'm messing that up, but it is up to 4 weeks. So there's no lock that he gets placed on IR or something like that. Right. So that was just the wording of it. We've gotten no official word with the team, but I don't think he's going to play this week or next, most likely.
But they have a bye week 5 is all I'm saying. Mm-hmm. So, it might have incentive to push him out for that week 6. So Allen Robinson, if you're in a deeper league, sure. I don't love it, especially Pat Freiermuth a bit banged up. But Niners defense obviously deserves credit with Bosa returning, but Kenny Pickett missed throws, and he looked like basically the opposite of the quarterback he looked in the preseason when he was flawless. So this might be a problem with Matt Canada, who hasn't produced a 400-yard game in 3 years or whatever. It's not what we expected when we were both hyping him. I was falling for the preseason hype, I'll admit that for sure. But losing my guy Deontay immediately is a big, big problem for an offense that already had question marks.
Yeah, I think Allen Robinson's in the best role on the team, like this big slot role, getting free releases, stuff like that. I think he's going to have some decent games. And I like Calvin Austin. I was a fan of him as a prospect, missed his entire rookie season, but he can burn and he can get open. He can run routes and separate. So interesting guy there for sure. And we'll see with George Pickens' role. Week 2, Cleveland Browns on Monday Night Football, like the ABC, ESPN. I mean, 2 games on Monday night, man. That's too much. But that's a big test because the Browns played extremely well in week 1, and they could whoop the Steelers up front just like they got whooped last week. All right, next one up, number 26, Indianapolis Colts. Anthony Richardson, 8th most dropbacks in week 1. This was a great run out for the Colts offense. And I know they lost the game, but if you're a Colts fan, you got to feel pretty good about what we saw in week 1 with Anthony Richardson.
Oh, yeah. You look at the stats, fewer than 225 passing yards, 1 passing TD. What's to like there? But you said it, the dropbacks tied for Patrick Mahomes this week. He was 8th in first down throw rate. Indy was 1st in neutral pace. Richardson had 2 of the Colts' 3 carries inside the 5. Would have had another if he didn't leave with that minor injury. Led all quarterbacks in designed runs. I mean, he's going to be an immediate top 5 fantasy QB. It's as simple as that. I mean, it really is. He looks like a lot of his passing was to one side of the field, but man, getting to play indoors at a lightning pace with absolutely no running backs on the roster, and Michael Pittman can house a screen like that, as you said. No, great guy. Didn't do much with his other 10 targets, but I just love the setup here for Richardson. I mean, again, he's an immediate borderline top 5 fantasy QB who was oddly not drafted or ranked as a top 12 guy.
And I think Michael Pittman's one of the biggest week 1 winners with the Colts playing this way as well. I think he needs to move up to clear wide receiver 2 territory, at least in fantasy. Number 27 here. I can't believe the Kansas City Chiefs are this late. Patrick Mahomes threw to his first read on just 43.6% of his passes. That was the third lowest in week 1, which makes sense because his guy that he would normally throw to on his first read, Travis Kelce's out of the offense. According to, I think Andy Reid said today that Travis Kelce's going to practice this week, which is good. I want to see this offense with Travis Kelce before really freaking out about anything with the Chiefs, but obviously it was not a good week 1 debut for this pass offense.
Yeah, hopefully Kelce returns healthy. This could be a really fun shootout with Jacksonville. And obviously we all know about, Tony, is concerning as Tony's game 1 was with all those drops. Boy, I'm far more worried if I were a Sky Moore guy. I mean, not able to earn the targets there, to me, it was a red flag without Kelce. I know you like him, but I could see the upside there now being a wide receiver 3 at best in PPR.
But that was the upside, honestly. Like that, even if you like him. And I liked him as a prospect. He had a whatever rookie year, but I was willing to kind of give him a pass for that. But I said throughout the whole thing, like his upside was probably like Juju last year. So I think that remains the upside case with him, which isn't like sexy by any means. I don't think Kadarius Toney, come on, man. That's like the worst game I've ever seen from a wide receiver. And he hasn't been a good player at any point in the NFL. Like, so I whatever. People can get excited about targets per route run there.
No, I'm not a Toney guy. That was not the best game I've seen on film.
No, that definitely not. All right, number 28, Tennessee Titans. Ryan Tannehill ranked dead last in the NFL in RBSDM's EPA per play and completion percentage over expectation composite metric. Tannehill was rough in week 1. He was under pressure. The offensive line stinks. But like this, I don't know, man. I'm a little bit on like Malik Willis watch for the Tennessee Titans because Will Levis got hurt in preseason and apparently didn't beat out Malik Willis anyways.
Yeah, I thought Tannehill was a nice super flex target, a guy who secretly runs and going to have the job with adding Hopkins and Burke's emergence. But that was a really ugly performance week 1, no question. But the Saints have a really decent defense. The other thing to note here is just how many snaps Tajay Spears got. Henry was still clearly the lead guy and game script dictated there. And he had a really nice reception that went for a long gain after finishing, I believe, 2nd in yards per route run last year, Derrick Henry. So he looked anything but washed, but Tajay Spears should be rostered in 100% of all fantasy formats, no matter how shallow the league is. Ton of upside there. Yeah, Tannehill didn't look good. I don't know what to say. I expect him to bounce back and play better, but maybe I'm wrong, and it will have to turn to Willis because this team's record could go bad for sure.
All right, next one up here, Denver Broncos. Russell Wilson led the NFL with 11 attempts on out-of-pocket throws. He had a 132.2 passer rating. I just think this is interesting because like this is the only way Russell Wilson can do good stuff is if he like moves out of the pocket, all that type of stuff. But I didn't come away from week 1 feeling like Sean Payton's about to fix Russell Wilson. I feel like he might survive with Russell Wilson, and that's it.
Pretty cool. He started his new tenure off with an onside kick. So Sean Payton of him, and sad to see Marvin Mims not involved more. But yeah, I'm with you tough. Too. I'm skeptical about the Russell Wilson relationship here, and I still expect Jared Stidham to get a handful of starts here. And I will totally admit I was wrong about Javonte Williams. I thought he would be eased in far, far more than he was. He looked fine, and he looks like he's only going to get more and more workload. So I was very concerned about where he was going in drafts, and it looks like I was wrong.
All right, next one up here, number 30, Los Angeles Chargers. This one comes in from Adam Levitan of Established the Run. Chargers in week 1 with Kellen Moore as first game as offensive coordinator, 17th in average depth of target, 14th in neutral situation pace, and 26th in pass rate over expectation. I really think, number one, I don't think this is they had a great offensive performance. I think this was good by Kellen Moore. I questioned a lot in the offseason about whether this team was just going to be like a throw it all over the field and like, oh yeah, everybody's just going to hit in fantasy and stuff like that. I'm a little concerned that people overrated that being the Kellen Moore effect when that's really not the way they played in Dallas necessarily. And it was tough to split like who was doing what between McCarthy and Kellen Moore. So I don't know, thoughts on Kellen Moore after week 1 offensive coordinator debut.
12 of the team's first 14 plays were runs. So, I mean, it was interesting to see Kellen Moore after everyone being so excited. Herbert's 7.5 average depth of target yardage was the 34th percentile. So more of the same, which I always said makes sense when you have Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler as options there. Mike Williams played the slot more as threatened there. He also left a little injured there. But the whatever. It was one game and the teams combined for 70 points. The Dolphins didn't even play a snap on offense with the lead. So it was working well for the Chargers. They had a tremendous success rate. But the key obviously here is Austin Eckler's health. And Josh Kelly would be a must start if Eckler unfortunately has to miss any time, which we all hope he does not.
100%. And obviously, as we said yesterday on the show, too early in the week to tell what's going to happen with Austin. So we will see. We record the damn podcast on people DMing me like, "What's going to happen with Austin?" I'm like, "It's Tuesday, yo. He doesn't know yet." Okay. Anyways, I'm not calling out our buddy Edwin Porras on that one. I know that was a joke, but seriously, people have been hitting me up about this. I'm like, "Give me a break, people." Okay. Number 31, Houston Texans. Nico Collins was second in week 1 with a 64% air yard share and had a 0.33 targets per route run. Yo, Dalton, Nico Collins is a wide receiver 3 in fantasy? Yes or no?
Yes, absolutely. No, I'd say no because he's closer to my wide receiver 2. I'm almost going to have him as a top 25 guy. You look at the air yards, you look at the target share. They had CJ Stroud doing a bunch of dropbacks as well. So, I mean, they weren't hiding him at all. So you feel like this team's going to happen to be throwing in game script situations. So we're both on Nico Collins. I'm really upset that a lot of those round 9, 10 area, I was debating Bateman and Collins, and I have plenty of Collins, but I would ultimately take Bateman over him, and I'm really frustrated at that decision because Collins looks like a wide receiver 3 locked in with upside for top 25 wide receiver.
Next one and last one here. First overall pick in the NFL draft, if it happened today, is Cincinnati Bengals, dead last in offensive success rate in week 1, but who cares, man? I can't believe we're having this, like, what's going on with the Bengals? They'll be fine going forward. I'm not concerned at all.
It was bad weather. Burrow hadn't played all preseason, dealing with that calf injury. Not concerned whatsoever. Higgins had the highest average depth of target, too. So don't totally worry about those, 8 targets, 0 catches, which was a historical performance. But Burrow's going to bounce back. Start chasing DFS this week. They'll blow up.
All right. That brings us to Thursday night football. We've got the Vikings and the Eagles. It opened at a 51 over under. It's been bet down to 49, the point total here. The Eagles are 6.5 point favorites. I think the bet down to 49 and the 6.5 point favorites does make a difference to me here, or it makes sense to me here, I should say. Couple of stats on these two teams. The two things I kind of want to hit on here. One, Eagles had 21 of 38 dropbacks against zone coverage in week 1, which is not the usual for Bill Belichick teams. Usually they play a bunch of man. I think Bill had a lot of time to prepare for that game and had a really nice game plan to slow down the Eagles offense. But Brian Flores, the new defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings, usually plays aggressive, man coverage, blitzing, all that stuff. So I think it's a big bounce back spot for all of your Eagles here in week number 2.
Oh, yeah. Start them. All the pass catchers, especially Goddard. I think they're going to make a point of feeding after last week. But yeah, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. You see that since, I think Levitan tweeted it, since week 1 of last year, they have Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown have the same number of targets, same exact number. Expect a big game from Hurts. Justin Jefferson, usually not quite as good outdoors, but obviously he's gonna smash here. The Eagles secondary looked vulnerable in week 1, getting eaten by the Bourne identity. So we don't know Kenneth Gainwell's status as we record this. It sounds pessimistic. So DeAndre Swift could go.
Yeah, I think it was actually while we were recording, they said, I think Sirianni said he's not expecting him to play.
There you Thursday. Go. I stand corrected. Get Swift is absolutely a viable option probably now. I mean, probably. It's absolutely probably. And then my guy Penny, are they going to even have him active? So we'll see there. But just expect a lot of the fantasy points coming from Jalen Hurts and company.
Yeah, Sirianni, I think, also said there's going to be some weeks where DeAndre Swift's super involved, and there's going to be some weeks where he has the role that he did last week. So, I mean, that's just going to be a total guessing game. But I think you got to feel decent, pretty good about him in week 2 here with no Kenny Gainwell. But if the rug gets ripped out from you and, Rashad Penny is active and he gets like 15 carries, I think you've got it. You can't be surprised about that because that's just the way the coaching staff used these two backs.
No doubt. And one thing I'll say about the Vikings, I'm always like, Cousins is YPA. They continue to be top 3 in pass rate over expectation like they were last year. The new coaching, maybe the efficiency isn't there, but the volume continues for Cousins. And that just helps pay the fantasy bills, even when it's not, perfect or appeasing my YPA. It looks like that's going to remain a thing this year. They're just throwing the ball like crazy.
Yeah, Jordan Addison ran a little bit behind KJ Osborne, but that's not going to happen forever. Like, he's eventually going to overtake Osborne. It could be this week. I mean, it could be this week. And he obviously had the big play in week 1. So I really like Jordan Addison going forward. And lastly, just on Alexander Mattison, again, from a stats perspective, 68% of the snaps, 67% of the rush attempts, 37% of the routes run, routes per dropback. So I know he scored the touchdown, Scott's touchdown deodorant. He's 100% right about that. But, in better matchups, I feel like Madison will have bigger games. I know people have asked me, like, would you trade Alexander Madison for like Puka Nacua, who we didn't talk about because we've talked a lot about Nacua in the last few episodes. I don't know, man. I think people are, counting the chickens a little bit before they hatch here with Madison, like as a dead zone back.
Agreed. It wasn't an impressive performance, but Ty Chandler was not involved as much as many had feared / hoped. So, yeah, I would take it as a modest win. And as long as he can stay healthy and be the feature back in that offense, the stats will come no matter how great he is as a player. I think it's totally fine there. Puka, by the way, in a league I'm in, I made a very aggressive, like a 55% fab bid on him, and he went for 100% in a league.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
that's cool.
He went for all 100. Yeah, I'm in on him, and if he can take over that Cup role, who I think is very questionable, moving forward timeline, I absolutely was aggressive with Puka. So my answer is yes, always Puka. I'm gonna have to rank him aggressively this week too. Everything you read, the college numbers, how he was targeted last week, I get it. The draft capital coming out of nowhere, there's a risk, but I think it's quite a right situation for him to be really valuable, at least until Cup returns.
You'll have to go read the reception perception write-up I just posted on Puka.
Going to. You liked his college too, though, right? You had some other. Yep. Yes, you did too. Yeah,
I was a fan.
Yeah.
I'm
in. I'm in, man. Go get him. Yeah.
I know the Rams have been ahead of the curve on a lot of things organizationally, but I think we got to look into them in terms of their ability to clone. I think they have cloned Robert Woods and brought him up through the college ranks as this Puka Nacua. And now he's just now they've got Robert Woods 2.0. It's crazy. He's like, it's just such a perfect player comparison. And he's a perfect fit for this offense. So yeah, I'm with you on being excited about Puka. But all right. Talk about Thursday Night Football. Speaking of Thursday Night Football, we got to throw to Ryan Fitzpatrick, who was nice enough to join us for a fantastic conversation. Well, let's take a listen. All right, if you're watching the YouTube version of this show, which, by the way, you definitely should, you can see that I am rocking the Loud shirt with 3 buttons down, as you must do for the guest we have on the podcast right now. He's former NFL quarterback. He's the owner of the best beard in the business, and he's currently dominating the Amazon Thursday night broadcast. It's Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan, thanks so much for being here, man. How was week 1 for you?
Oh, my gosh. Week 1 was so exciting. But before we get into that, your shirt that you're wearing, that is a top 3 all-time shirt. I have the exact same one. I love that 3 buttons are down, and it's that seersucker material. Oh, yeah. So it's super soft. It breathes. Anyway, wonderful shirt, and what a wonderful start to the NFL season as well.
Absolutely. As you said to me years ago, it's all about, regional and seasonal. And it's still over 80 degrees where I'm at right now. So regionally and seasonally, this is still an appropriate shirt. But you are dressed much more appropriate, actually, for the occasion here, Ryan, because you're here with us on behalf of Jameson Touchdown in Dublin. Look, we all know about Jameson Whiskey, but tell us a little bit about this campaign here.
Well, Jameson and I are unofficially trying to get pro football in Dublin, Ireland. It just seems like we've done London, and I went over there and played, and it was awesome. We've now done Germany with Munich and Frankfurt coming up, Mexico City. Dublin, Ireland seems like the next big city to get it done. I think there's a lot of interest there. We've seen it with college. We've seen it with Notre Dame going over there. So we've unofficially teamed up to say, hey, let's get a pro game in Dublin, Ireland.
Yeah, I saw the stat that 86% of NFL fans would be excited to see an NFL game in Dublin. So, hey, man, I think Ireland is next. So I love to see that with Jameson. That's awesome. The more people we can grow the game to and get a live game in front of folks, the better. That's my opinion on the matter.
Yeah, I completely agree. And they've got some cool stuff going on. If we can get this done before the start of next season, jamesonsports.com, then they're even going to fly some people over there, and they're putting a whole big campaign behind it. So exciting times for Jameson and obviously for pro football.
It's always exciting times for pro football. Week 1 is always an exciting time. It's basically like the tidal wave completely hits you, washes you over with all this new information. But Ryan, it also tends to be a perfect time for wild overreactions. What do you think coming out of week 1 is the potential biggest overreaction, or is there a particular overreaction you've seen so far?
Well, I got to see a lot on Sunday because my son, he's a junior in high school and had all his buddies over and we watched together and all they care about is fantasy. So, they're trading Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. This is the end. Oh my gosh, Drake London didn't have any catches. So that's all I heard was from the fantasy end, But I think there was some weather in some games. So if we're looking at Cleveland, Cincinnati, those numbers are really down for Joe. They had their issues. But there was weather for Daniel Jones too. Some of those struggles maybe were related to that. But I came out of it more with San Francisco looked really good.
Yeah.
I mean, San Francisco it was a great performance by Brock Purdy because of the question marks from his injury last year, because of, is this really the guy? And then the comments from Patrick Peterson and him going at him twice for touchdowns. Mm-hmm. That was one of the things that left the biggest impression on me this weekend.
He's got such a great cast around him too. And, guys that I think, like a guy like Brandon Ayuk, I'm a huge Brandon Ayuk fan. I think he's been like quietly one of the best underrated route runners in the NFL the last few years. And he really looked like he's taken his game to another level in week 1. Just what you've seen from Brock particularly, what do you think kind of makes him such a good fit with Kyle Shanahan, and maybe what allows him to accentuate some of these guys so well?
Well, just from last year, and it's something that's very difficult for a young guy to come in and do, but he's an elite decision maker. He really is. More often than not, he's making the perfect decision. He's an accurate quarterback. He's athletic enough to, when he needs to get out of the pocket, whether it is to escape and make a throw or gain some yards with his feet, he can do it. So that team is just such a great place to be if you're a quarterback, but for him in particular, and being able to think quickly and deliver the ball on time and accurately, what a great marriage with those two right now.
I'm sure that as kind of like an underdog guy yourself, you're probably really enjoying what you're seeing out of Brock Purdy. That's there's some easy symmetry there. Another guy that I'm sure you have a lot of appreciation for, and the guy who had a great week 1 performance, your former teammate, Tua, down there in Miami. You put on an absolute show. I remember speaking with you about him years ago and sort of what you appreciated about him then. You've spoken quite often publicly about kind of your relationship and everything with him on Thursday Night Football and other spaces. What has stood out to you kind of about him way back in 2020, and how do you think he's grown and evolved since?
Well, I think they put some great playmakers around him. And so I think when Mike McDaniel came in, he realized it is this guy's anticipation and his timing and his accuracy. Those are the things. And much like that San Francisco offense, very similar offense in what they're trying to do in Miami, it's about getting the balls to these guys in space and letting them catch and run. So they might have the 2 most elite receivers in terms of the catch and run, Tyreek Hill, which we saw over and over and over again,
and over again
on Sunday, and Waddle too. And Waddle had some grabs, not as many as Tyreek, and he kind of got overshadowed in that game. But when you line up against the Dolphins, you're just scared to death as a DB because of that. So you see it when Tua hits his back foot and gets rid of the ball. That's when we're seeing all these great plays. It's when he has to, get to the second or third read and throw it downfield. We saw a couple of those during the game where he missed Tyreek, or the ball got batted down and broken up. But that come in with all the question marks from last season, to go through an offseason that people question him, and Ryan Clark calling him out, and to go against Herbert, the guy there's always been the rivalry with, and to do what he did and to lead the team to that last touchdown drive and throw for basically 450 yards. Pretty impressive start for the kid.
Yeah, absolutely. Really impressive start. And I'll admit to being kind of, I wouldn't say skeptical about any of these guys or this offense, but I'll admit to saying, like, all right, how do they, like, what's their second pitch, right? What's their counter? Because they, this very defense, I think, actually gave them the most trouble last year of any team. There was certainly no trouble in week 1. And I think what really stood out to me, and you can kind of heat check me on this, I think Tua's superpower has always been his ability to get the ball out hyper fast while pushing it downfield. And I pulled this from NFL Next Gen Stats. Among quarterbacks who played on Sunday, Tua had the 5th fastest time to throw, but he had the most air yards per completion. And it was obviously to Tyreek, but like you said, getting to his second and third read, these guys like River Craycraft making plays, Durham Smythe, Braxton Berrios, all these guys had big completions on sort of these hyper fast, get it out. What about his game? Like, what skill in particular makes like a result like that stat possible?
I think it's just even being more comfortable in this system, because you saw that, especially on the one drive where he had the 3 completions to Durham Smythe. He knew what the defense was pre-snap, and he knew where the vulnerabilities were going to be. So it's been really cool to see his progression, and it's been really cool to see a coach empower him and give him so much confidence. They're just such a fast team. There's so much team speed. And if you look at that game too, they fumbled in the red zone. He threw an interception in the red zone. So
yeah,
they did score all those points, but it could have been a lot worse.
There's got to be something to the confidence, right? Like I remember Mike McDaniel on the very first like kind of social clip that the team put out about him, or one of the first ones, who knows, it's a million years ago at this point, right? Like him calling Tua on the plane saying like, my job is to make you look good. And, everybody, because we're in such a cynical and like skeptical world, everybody looks at that and like kind of waves it off like, he's not his guy, right? Or something like that. But he really has embodied and believed that as a quarterback, when your coach and play caller has that kind of confidence in you, like what does that bring on game day, even when you're making these mistakes?
Yeah, it goes a long way to know that there are people that are in your corner. It goes a long way. And I think for Tua, as somebody since he's been in the NFL, facing the criticism and the doubters and all those things, to have people in your building that 100% are in your corner, that helps a lot when you go out there on Sunday.
Besides Tua, and obviously we talk about Brock Purdy too, is there any other week 1 quarterback performance, like good or bad, that kind of just made you go,
Yeah, I think a lot of people are talking about Joe Burrow, and that we've just seen enough with Burrow where we think that's just something that maybe we can blame it on rust a little bit, we can blame it on the weather, but I think they're going to be just fine. A lot of people are alarmed with Daniel Jones again.
Yeah.
They fell behind early. They had the block kick, they had the pick six, and it was one of those games with the weather where throwing wasn't going to be advantageous. They just kind of got out of their game. The Giants aren't built for, hey, let's fall back by a few touchdowns and come back and get this thing, like a team like the Dolphins are with their explosiveness. So they were behind the chains early, so to say, in that one. And that wasn't indicative of what Daniel Jones did last year. And then Kirk Cousins, another one that, just had some turnovers, and you come out of that game as a Minnesota fan thinking, okay, are we going to see regression this year? I think that one's super interesting. There's some frustrations on the sideline during that game. So again, this NFL season, like I was sitting there like a kid in a candy shop, just ready to go. Like I actually have this set up with all these TVs, and now you can watch them all at the same time. And
oh yeah,
what a great day of football. I've got to probably work out and get some of that laziness off of my body today.
Hey, football rocks, man. It's always a tough time in fall to keep up with the fitness, but we do our best, right? You mentioned the Vikings Thursday Night Football. That's awesome. You're going to get a good look at that team. Last thing for you here, man. Since retiring and moving into the media side of things, is there anything you've learned sort of to grow and appreciate like more about football, or just learned in general now that your playing days are in your past?
I think when you're in it, you almost don't realize or appreciate how cool it is. And then when you're on the outside looking in, even something as simple as watching these guys warm up before a game, just the atmosphere, the environment. I think when you get on the outside and look at it from a different perspective, instead of just, okay, we're in week 3, we got to get through this. It's such an amazing product. It's such an amazing place to be around, and that's why I'm really thankful that we actually get to go to the games and feel that energy. And it's pretty cool being able to do what I'm doing now as well.
Yeah, and you're crushing it. It's been awesome to see, Ryan. Really appreciate the time here, man, and definitely everybody got to go check out what you're doing with Jameson. That would be the only follow up there would be what regional and seasonal. What's the right regional and seasonal environment for a Jameson? As opposed to the 3 button down shirt that I'm rocking here. You pulled off that hat, man. I could never pull it off. So shout out to you.
Yeah, I think the hat would be part of it, but it definitely wouldn't be wearing a button down with 3 buttons down. I could tell you that much.
That's for sure. Hey, Ryan Fitzpatrick, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Everybody, check out what he's working with Jameson, and of course, Thursday Night Football. You're all dialed into that. I'm jacked up more than ever about football after this conversation, so I appreciate your time, Ryan.
Thank you.
All right, Dalton, Statner Thursday, another one in the book, buddy. Appreciate you as always. I hope week 2 is kind to you, my friend.
Good times, man. Same to you. Good talking ball.
Yeah, and I will. If I do the voice in week 2 on FFL, I will not do it about anything that's you related, so that we can remain good friends.
Appreciate that.
All right, that's going to do it for us today, folks. Tomorrow, we set the stage for week 2 with the games you need to binge, stream, and skip. 4 for 4's Jen Eakins joins me for that. Very excited. Until then, we're out.